In this video, I'll be going through what a typical training week looks like using the Norwegian singles approach, as well as what the interval sessions themselves look like, how to gauge intensity. Now, I'll say I'll be going through how to gauge intensity and how to do those things, but I've only been doing this for 3 weeks. So as with all of my videos, I'm not coming at this as an expert. I'm just saying, look, here's what I'm doing. Let's learn together. If you find it helpful, awesome. The weekly structure itself is very simple. It's nothing special. All we're doing is alternating easy days with quality days and a long run on the weekend. So here's what a sample week might look like. I myself do my interval sessions on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I've got my long run on Saturday, which means Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday are just easy. And that is it. It really is that simple. There's nothing fancy. Now, I will say one thing you probably need to be successful using this approach is being comfortable with just doing the same thing over and over again. I don't have a problem with that, but if you are a person who needs a bit more variety in your training, then yeah, this approach probably isn't going to work for you. But that's the weekly structure. Here's what the interval sessions look like. So there are only 3 interval sessions you're going to do. And yeah, this is what they look like. So I myself have chosen to do 10 by 3 minutes off 60 seconds recovery. I do those on Friday. My Wednesday sessions are 5 by 6.5 minutes off 90 seconds recovery. And my Monday sessions are 3 by 12 minutes off 2 minutes recovery. And again, that's it. You just do the same thing over and over again. So I'm 3 weeks into it. I'm definitely not bored of the sessions yet. But the key is, well, there are 2 keys. Let's talk about the easy one first. So the easy days have got to be easy. Now, fortunately, I've been running easy days easy for a long time now. So this wasn't a big adjustment for me, but a lot of people who've tried this approach have remarked that they've really had to slow down their easy days. But it's the same with any training. You've got to make sure you're recovered for the interval sessions. My 5K time at the moment is probably about 18:50, 19 minutes, around that mark. And my easy run pace varies from about 5 minutes 20 per K, right through to 5 minutes 45 per K. And I just run depending on how I'm feeling. So I always make sure it feels easy. Typically they're about 5:30, 5:35. So, and I feel like they're in a really good spot. They're very easy. In terms of percentage of heart rate, they're low. Like I haven't worked out exactly, but it's about 60 to 65% of my max. So really relaxed, really controlled. Those easy days, it's really important that they are very easy. So gauging the intensity of the sessions themselves, this bit is really important because the whole system relies on a large volume of the sub-threshold training, which is only achievable if you don't go above that threshold, because as I discussed last week, when we do, the fatigue we experience increases exponentially. So we've got to stay below that in order to get the amount of volume of this sub-threshold training that we're after. Now, there are a few ways of gauging intensity, obviously. There's using a lactate meter, which I'm assuming most people watching this video don't have access to. There's percentage of heart rate, there's pace, there's rate of perceived exertion, all of those things. So, I mean, let's start with the easy one first, using a lactate meter. I don't have a lactate meter. I've actually thought about buying one all week long. There's a refurbished one on eBay going pretty cheaply. I've opted not to, and that's because it just seems really hard to justify. Even though it's refurbished, it's a lot cheaper than new, it's still quite expensive. But more than that, the test strips themselves are really expensive. I think I worked out they're about $7.50 to $8 each for each test strip. And this particular lactate meter I found, you can't even get the strips in Australia, so I'd have to always get them in from the US. But all that aside as well, they're not even 100% reliable. Like reading reviews of people who have used them, a lot of people struggle to get reliable readings. Now, granted, a lot of that's probably user error, but it just seemed like a lot of money to spend for no guarantees. And even if I could be guaranteed good results with that, it just seems like a waste because I'd only need it for a month. I'd only need to do initial testing to get my own personal lactate curve, because you can't go off like generic figures. You can't say I need to stay between 2.5 to 3.5 millimoles per liter because my body might be different. So you need to do it yourself. So I'd need, a testing day for that. And then I'd probably have 3 weeks where I'd be testing after every interval just to verify I'm within that range that I established during my test. And then I wouldn't really use the meter again because it's $7.50, $8 a pop for the test strips. There's just no point. Once you've established that base and you're kind of locked into that training intensity, there's just no point in carrying on testing. So I'm not going to get a lactate meter, and I don't think it's necessary at all, but that's kind of, I guess, the gold standard. Heart rate. We're wanting to stay between 85 and 90% of our maximum heart rate. Now, that's a bit deceptive though, because especially when we're doing these, I guess, lower intensity intervals, it takes a while for the heart rate to come up. So you can't go off that first interval. You're looking at the last interval. So your heart rate, it is a good one, but it takes a while. Like it'll take a few reps to get going, to get reliable results. But heart rate, is good and it allows you to track over time. So ideally, when you're hitting the same paces, after a few weeks, your heart rate should be dropping, meaning you're working less hard, getting fitter. So there's the heart rate where on the intervals, you're looking to stay probably between 85 and 88% of your maximum. Pace is another good one. Now this depends where you're running. I train on a track to keep things consistent. So pace is actually really good for me at the moment, but of course it changes with weather. So to get those paces, there are a few ways. So let's start with the shorter intervals. With the 10 by 3 minute intervals I've been doing, I aim to do those at about 15K pace. The medium intervals, which are for me 5 by 6.5 minutes, I do those at about half marathon pace. And the longer intervals, so for me 3 by 12 minutes at the moment, they're at about 30K pace. So you can use all sorts of calculators to work those out. By the way, with all of this stuff, I'm going to put a lot of links in the description of all sorts of resources to help you with this. You can read up more about what the system's about, but it's also got some pace calculators in there. And I use a whole combination of things to come up with my paces. So if you're going to use pace to gauge your intensity, then you need an up-to-date all-out 5K time. So in this method, every 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to be running all-out park runs or 5K races or time trials, whatever. But you need all-out 5K effort to calculate your paces, and we need to update that every 6 to 8 weeks just so it stays current, and also so as motivation, like it's motivating. When we gain fitness and see our times dropping, that keeps us going. And also it probably provides a little bit of stimulus at that faster pace. It's good for us to go all out. It's good mental training. So I actually do those all outs every 4 weeks. I just find I really look forward to that. Like I view it as a race, even though it's park run. I just think it's really great training. So you're going to need an up-to-date 5K and you're going to need to redo it every 6 to 8 weeks at a minimum. But it's probably worth mentioning at this point that every single metric we're using to gauge intensity, it's a surrogate for intensity. It's a surrogate for our physiological state. So our body knows nothing about pace, couldn't give a flying Big Mac. We're just using pace to give us a ballpark figure. It's much more important that we're staying in that sub-threshold state. And this is where it can sound a bit murky, because especially if you're a beginner, it doesn't sound overly helpful. Just go off feel, how should it feel? We'll talk more about that in a moment. But I really do think that with this style of training, it is, I think, essential to gauge how it feels and actually use rate of perceived exertion, or RPE, as your primary metric going forward. So the paces are going to get you really close, but what we can do is when we're really tuned into our body, we can, because our bodies fluctuate, like week to week, our recovery changes. Some days you're up for it, some days you're not. You understand. And if you're training using RPE, you can adjust accordingly to always make sure you're in that zone. Otherwise, some days when your body's just not up for it, you're going to be pushing to hit those paces because that's the way we're wired. We're runners. We always just go, go, go. And we're going to end up overcooking it. Whereas I find going off how we're feeling, that's a really good metric to use. Now, I personally feel comfortable doing this because I've been training pretty much by rate of perceived exertion for around 6 months now. So at some point during my last marathon build, I got really sick of being a slave to the watch and just switched to running by feel. Loved it. Everything was better. So I feel like I'm pretty well tuned in. And so once we've calibrated that rate of perceived exertion with the correct intensity, we can just run by feel and let the paces sit where they sit knowing that we're still running in that right zone. But to start with, definitely use those calculators to give you a ballpark figure, but be prepared to adjust. And always start conservative, because it's much worse if we go too hard than too easy. So always start conservative and build up. And after a few weeks or months, I don't know, I've only been doing this for 3 weeks now, you'll get to know where you're at. But like I say, I'm not new to training. I'm not new to sub-threshold training. I know where it's meant to sit, so I'm very comfortable with where my sessions are sitting. One general observation that I've found training using this method is that the intervals, they're harder than you think. On paper, it looks really easy. You think, oh, these short intervals, it's all sub-threshold. It's all slower than I'm used to training. But you're still working. Like RPE 6 to 7 is really accurate. It's comfortably hard is a really good way of describing it. So at the end, you're definitely working. I'm definitely thinking, oh, it'll be nice when this finishes. But I guess the difference is I'm not craving for the session to be finished. Like I can definitely do another couple of reps if I had to. But you're still working at the end. You're still breathing, but the breathing is controlled. Speaking of breathing, that's another really good indicator that we can use as to when we overdo it. So there's definitely a point when our breathing changes. And if we're kind of tuned in and listening and just aware of our bodies, it's pretty easy to pick up. When your breathing crosses that threshold and just becomes much more forced and heavy, then you know you've definitely gone too hard. So your breathing should always stay controlled, but you're certainly working at the end of it. So if you're going to try this, be prepared to work, but it's not crazy intense. I wanted to include a lot more footage from the actual workouts in this video, but at the moment we're in the depths of winter in Perth, Australia. So it's pitch black when I do my interval sessions, but this one was done in the holidays. This is the first 10 by 3 minute interval session. So I just thought I'd show you a bit of this so you can get a little bit of a feel of the intensity by my breathing. Another way of calibrating your intensity levels is how we're recovering. We definitely should be able to come back 2 days later and do another interval session. If you're finding you can't do that, if you're finding you're still sore, still tired, then you've gone too hard for sure. So definitely use your recovery as a bit of a metric as well. You can use things like your resting heart rate when you wake up. You can use your HRV. But I find the most reliable one is motivation actually. I find when I overdo it, I lose some of my motivation and I'm not so pumped up to go and get the interval session done. Like at the moment, I'm concurrently doing another experiment where I'm trialing doing full body strength work every single day. Now, at the end of last week, I started to notice that I just couldn't be asked doing it. I didn't want to. And that was definitely a sign, okay, I've overcooked it, pull back intensity. I think it's the same with running. The minute you start having trouble heading out the door, the minute you start not really being into it, I think that's a really good sign that you've overdone it. So definitely be aware of how you're pulling up. Personally, most days I feel like I could do another session the next day. Is that a sign that I haven't been going hard enough? I don't think so. But I guess we'll find out as time goes on. And be willing to adjust things. So after a few weeks, definitely reassess, notice trends, look at your heart rate, look at your paces, look at how you're pulling up. So you're gathering all this data for the first 4 to 6 weeks. And after that, then I think you can really get it locked in. So as you can see, this approach to training, it's really simple. You do the same sessions every week, nothing changes. Once you've got that intensity dialed in, again, it's just all the same. Some people really struggle with the monotony. I don't. I actually find it quite liberating. It doesn't occupy my mind so much. I feel like I've gotten part of my life back. So once you've got it locked in, it's just basically set and forget. You just let it happen, just lock in, get the work done and get on with life. Hopefully you found that helpful. Coming up in this series, I'm going to go into the adjustments I've made for marathon training. I'm going to go into how I'm going with the strength training. There's plenty more to come, so I hope you're going to join me on this journey and hopefully I'm going to see some pretty radical progress. I've got an all-out 5K this Saturday. I'll film that, post it, talk you through it. I'm not expecting huge results after only 4 weeks, but we'll see. You'll never know. I'll see you next time.